Okay, I'm going to show you one of my favourite boilie rigs. It's going to be a snowman presentation. I like the fact that with a snowman presentation things are not necessarily critically balanced so they sink ridiculously slowly, but I like the idea that that the rig resets itself. If there are a bream or other fish in the swim kicking things around, it'll settle back down onto the bottom nicely. It will negate the weight of the hook regardless of what size I'm using, and so on. My favourite bait is the Chinese takeaway, and in every single bag of freezer bait comes one of these little packets with some hardened hook baits in. So obviously going to use that to tie the rig up. Now to counterbalance the rig, I'm using these bun spice, either the bun spice or the top banana. They're my favourite. The bun spice has got a lot of aniseed in, and the Chinese 5 spices in the Chinese takeaway has a lot of aniseed too, so I think they're actually a pretty good combination. So we're going to create that as our bait. So first job, get there on the baiting needle. When you're tying up a snowman rig, make sure that you go right through the middle of the baits, otherwise it can sit a bit offset and wonky, and you definitely don't want that. The hook link material I'm going to use is this easy strip. What I'm going to do is strip off about 20 centimetres, so I'll just measure that off on the top of my box, and you can either use your fingers, teeth, whatever you like to use, but as it says on the tin, easy strip. I've just taken my fingers, pulled it back, one go, it's off. There's the supple material inside. Nice colour, nice brown colour, and really, really supple. I'm going to tie a loop in the end, just an overhand loop. Now what I want to happen is the loop to be big enough so that the knot is sitting not in the pop-up but actually down in the bottom bait. That will lock the bottom bait on the hair in position and keep the two sitting together so that the bottom bait doesn't slide up and down the hair. There are other times you may want that to happen, but for this rig I want the two sitting together. So it's actually quite a large loop just to get a hair stop through, but that helps this rig work, I think. So there's the hardened hook bait, there's the buoyant pop-up, hair through, there's the baited, there's the hair stops sitting at the other end of the baiting needle, pop that on through and down. Next I'm going to take a piece of rig silicone. I really like this rig silicone. It's good and strong. There's a reasonable thickness to the wool that, compared with some of the others that I've tried on the market, it still stretches over the hook and doesn't look too obtrusive, but it's a bit stronger. It holds the hair in place on the hook shank better, but two, when you caught a couple of fish, it still stays there. It doesn't break like a lot of others on the market. So that's my piece of silicone. On goes one of my favourite hooks, size 8 101s, absolutely amazing hook. Got the new mute camo colouring to it, absolutely insanely sharp. Every single one out of the packet is just prickly sharp. So we're going to slide that through the silicone like so, making sure you don't put it through the braided material, and slide that silicone round the shank. And I leave pretty much a centimetre between the shank and the boilie. Tie yourself a simple knotless knot, making sure you go round that way once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Push it back down and through. Then to make sure that the line is leaving the eye of the hook at the right angle, I'm going to put on some of this shrink tube. The micro just fits over the top of the eye of these. You may want to go up to the next size, the small. I'm going to use the micro here, and I'm going to snip off 15 millimeters, centimetre and a half. With different pattern hooks, I think the length of shrink tube or kicker or whatever you like to call it really does matter. If I'm using a long shank hook, I'll use a different amount of shrink tube. With this pattern of hook, I think a centimetre and a half, a good long amount, really does work. So I'm just sliding that over the eye of the hook. Bit of a tight fit, but I prefer it that way. It will then shrink down really nice and tight. And so that's gone over the eye of the hook, and it's gone over the knot as well, hanging out the eye, and I'm going to shrink that down at a fairly shallow angle like so. Okay, so I'm steaming down that shrink tube, making sure that the shrink tube stays in line with the point. So you don't want it off to one side or the other. It's really important for the mechanics of the rig that it stays dead in line with the point, not too sharp an angle, fairly long like so. Make sure it's all completely shrunk down and let it cool off in a nice straight line. You can see there that the shrink tube and the point of the hook are dead in line. What we've also got here is the nice supple section, and then this coating here is acting just the way it's supposed to. So absolutely fantastic rig, creating that traditional combi style. I'll counterbalance those so that will slowly sink down, sit on the bottom. The hook will lay flat on the bottom, with that bottom bait sitting on the bottom as well, with a nice visual aniseed and bun spice pop-up sat on the top of it. Fantastic rig. It's what I use for my boilie fishing. Give it a try.